Hello everyone, this is Tom Hudson with IBM. In this video I demonstrate how to use ServiceNow tasks with continuous release. In this demo I'm using a deployment plan that contains 3 ServiceNow type tasks. Taken together, the deployment plan demonstrates how to interact with a ServiceNow instance. The first task creates a change request in ServiceNow. The second task waits for an approval from ServiceNow. And finally, the third task updates the change request status to implement. Continuous release can respond to and update any property in a ServiceNow change request. Alright, starting on the continuous release activities page, I'm going to create a release for the demo. I'm going to call the release something creative, August demo. I think is good. Next, I select the template for the release. Every template that you select will have a corresponding deployment plan added to the release when you save it. If you select multiple templates, you can start the release with multiple deployment plans ready to go. Finally, I select the team for the demo and click Save and View Details to open the release detail page. On the release details page, we see the deployment plan created from the template I selected earlier. Opening the deployment plan, we see the 3 ServiceNow type tasks defined in the template. Before starting the deployment, I'm adding a manual task to the plan. The manual task represents release activity that would typically occur after the change request is approved. Let me reposition the manual task and be ready to examine the ServiceNow task. Each ServiceNow task provides the URL to a ServiceNow instance, supplies credentials, and selects the action. The first task uses the create action to create a ServiceNow change request. This task uses the normal request type, which is the complete ServiceNow state model. The text in the short description field will appear in the corresponding short description field of the ServiceNow request. The assignment group determines which ServiceNow entity is responsible for resolving the new request. For the demo, we select Change Management. The Additional Properties box is where we can define ServiceNow variables. You can reference any ServiceNow change request variable. For the demo, we've selected a few representative properties. We set the approval property to requested. This means that we expect someone on the ServiceNow change management team to approve the new request. The next continuous release task will pause the deployment and wait until approval is given. We set the state to -4, which represents the assessed state in the ServiceNow normal state model. It's common to use update actions to modify the ServiceNow change request state. The continuous release documentation describes the ServiceNow state model. Finally, we defined a ServiceNow property in the output property field. This field will contain the ID of the new change request. Other ServiceNow tasks can use this property to identify the request. Here are the properties for the next ServiceNow task in the deployment plan. This task uses the wait action to pause the deployment until the change request created in the previous task is approved by someone in ServiceNow. This task polls the ServiceNow approval field every minute until the property has the value of approved. When approval is given, the task closes. The last ServiceNow task in our deployment plan uses the update action to modify our change request. As with the first ServiceNow task, we modify the state property. This task sets the state property to -1, which represents the implemented state in the ServiceNow normal state model. Alright, I start the deployment by starting the create request task. Typically, this task takes very little time to complete. Moving to ServiceNow, we can see the change request created by our task. The state, which is set by the task, is assessed. You can see the short description derived from our continuous release task. The change manager, me in this instance, approves the request, which changes the request state to authorize, meaning waiting for authorization. Next, I lazily select all the listed approvers and approve the request. You can see the request state is now scheduled. Back in continuous release, we see that the waiting task is complete. This task paused the deployment until approval was received from ServiceNow. Now that the task is complete, other tasks can start. If the next task was an auto task, it would start automatically. Okay, I start a manual task. As you recall, this task abstractly represents deployment activity. When I complete the task, the last task starts automatically. The last task ends rather quickly after updating the ServiceNow change request. Moving back to ServiceNow, we can see that the request state is indeed updated to implement. The demo ends here, but I think you can see how easy it would be to add other ServiceNow tasks to our deployment plan to update the change request and move it through the state model until it's closed. This is Tom Hudson. Thank you for watching.